Here at St. Andrew, we are in the middle of our Lenten series, our Lenten worship theme, Follow Jesus. And if you've been following in the footsteps of Jesus this Lenten season so far, you'll know that we started on Ash Wednesday reflecting on temptation. How Jesus himself in the wilderness was tempted by the devil for 40 days in an attempt to break Jesus from his mission and his ministry. We know that we ourselves are tempted in many ways throughout the day, throughout our journey. And by resisting temptation and holding fast to God's promises, we are assured to grow in faith, hope, and love. Then last Sunday, we talked about calling and how to follow Jesus means to take up a calling. Jesus himself unrolled the scroll of Isaiah and said that he had been anointed and the Spirit was with him to bring good news to the poor, to give sight to the blind and let the oppressed go free. And so those who follow Jesus follow with a crystal clear call, each with our own gifts, each in our own place, to reflect the good news of light, hope, freedom, and salvation in Christ. And so today, as we continue the journey, we discuss surrender. Surrender. And it's no secret that if we're not our own worst enemy, we're pretty close. And we have lots of things that we hold on to that keep us from growing to our full potential. It really falls into three categories. The three categories are: we know what's best, we want to do it our way, we hold on to that. We hold on to, we want to do it ourselves, we don't need no help from no one. Number three is we find it difficult to let go of our imperfections and reach for something greater. Kind of a funny illustration. None of my family is here to appreciate this illustration, but I am renowned in our family for choosing the worst rest stops. Anyone have that distinction in their family when they're making a trip? I choose the worst gas stations, restaurants, hotels, pit stop, you name it, I choose. You know what? The criteria is simple, because we drive a lot back and forth to Florida, up and down I-95. And so the criteria is simple. It's got to be close to the highway, it's got to be clean, and it's got to be a recognized brand. And you'd be surprised at how often I can get that wrong. And it's usually, for one of those three reasons that I just listed. Either I know, I've remembered correctly, of course, that at exit such and such is going to be such and such a place, only to pull off to find that you can smell the bathroom from the parking lot. One evening, we were driving, and we were making a 2-day trip out of it, half one day, half the other day. And we chose a motel. We chose a Days Inn, right? It's a recognized brand, not the greatest brand, but it's, for travel purposes, okay. And so it's 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. We're only going to sleep for about 5 hours, so what does it really matter? So we pull off the side. Days Inn, recognized brand, close to the highway. I go in, and, they have to buzz me through the front door. And then, to take my reservation, I've got to slide my credit card through the bulletproof glass. But it's a Days Inn, right? Recognized brand. Not the greatest, but you know what you get. Well, it wasn't really so clean. It really didn't smell all that great. And Amy was so mad at me. Oh, she was mad. She's like, at what point was when you were sliding the credit card through the bulletproof glass that you thought this was a good idea? But I was convinced, right? I knew what was best, what was right. Well, Since then, I've just surrendered the responsibility of choosing anything when we're driving. I just let somebody choose. I'll let somebody else drive, too. I'll just sit there. And so surrender is all about our story today. You know, we start off, Jesus has gained some following already. He's got the crowds following him. And they're hungry for this teaching. They're hungry for this teaching, the Word of God. And the crowd gets so big and so dense that he's got to look around to find a way to continue to teach. And so he spots these two boats. And he gets into one and asks Simon to put out a little ways, and so he teaches from the boat. And then he makes the request of Simon Peter. Put it out into deep water and let down the net. Now you can imagine, now Peter responds by saying, Master. All right, Master. We fished all night. We didn't catch anything. And what he was thinking, but he didn't say, was, we already cleaned the nets. We really don't want to dirty them all up again by dragging them through the water. But you got to wonder what's going through Peter's mind. Peter, a hardened, career commercial fisherman who spent all night in all his wisdom and all his knowledge catching nothing. Here's the rabbi walking along the shoreline who probably really didn't know. Jesus knows everything, right? But probably not a lot about boats. Probably not a lot about fishing. He's a carpenter, right? And so I can imagine Peter saying, this is going to absolutely do nothing. But you know what? To humor him, Master, because you say so, let's go. And so they move out into deeper water. They cast the nets. And as is often the case with Jesus, something miraculous happens. The nets are so full of fish that they're full to bursting. And it's almost too much of a good thing, right? Because the boat almost sinks. They have to even call over another boat so that they fill both the boats. So both of them are almost sinking. Maybe somebody's scratching their head and saying, is this really a good miracle or not? And it brings us to our first lesson about surrender. Sometimes we have to surrender our own way in order to let Jesus do a miracle of abundance in our lives. If we just hold on to our way, and we know this from our own experience, but it's probably clearer, we see it in those around us, those we know and love. You ever notice somebody who's so set on their own way, you see the limitation of what they can do or can't do next? Because they never give another opportunity a try. They never give another point of view a try. They never give a new way of doing things a try. They never trust in anybody else's requests or suggestions. Here, in this case, Peter surrenders enough to say, because you say so, let's go out. And while they're out there, it's interesting to know about fishermen. Anyone ever watch Deadliest Catch or any of those other reality? Oh, yeah. I don't know who would want to be an Alaskan fisher person. That's a hard life. And you know what? If you watch those shows, one of the funniest things and one of the most engaging things about those shows is that there's such a competition between the different boats and the different captains and the different crews. But you ever notice what happens when something goes wrong with any one of the boats? Boom. They are all on the same team trying to make sure that everybody is safe. And we know this too, even living in close proximity to traditional fishing communities here up and down the coast of Monmouth and Ocean County. It's a close-knit community. And now while you may be able to take your fishing pole and tip your hat down and have a nice solitary afternoon somewhere, the kind of fishing that these guys are doing takes teamwork. It takes partnership. It takes community. Even says, Simon motions to his partners, James and John, that he needs help to get the fish into the boat. Well, this is the second pointer for how we need to look at surrendering. These folks, Simon and the gang, James, John, Andrew, who they don't mention, they work together. They fish together. They don't do it alone. How often do we want to do it alone without any help? I always want to do it alone without any help. I tried to drag a sectional sofa out of my living room at the last house I was living at because it had to go to the curb. And I had injured my neck, so I really couldn't lift it. So I'm, with one hand, and, people are, the church there that was across the street, there were people in the parking lot. You need a hand with that? No, I got it. I'm dragging the sectional sofa out because I didn't want any help. Anyone out there like that? Just do it yourself. Don't bother any help. Do it yourself. Yeah. See a lot of guys waving their hands. That's one of those kind of guy traits. Lots of times. Do it myself. Well, it turns out that what he's calling the disciples to do, in the very last line, I will make you fishers of people. I don't know if that's the exact word in this story. You'll be catching people. That is also going to be a community thing. You can't do Christian community by yourself. You can't be on mission to seek and save the lost like Christ did by yourself. It takes lots of people, lots of gifts and talents, lots of hands working. Anyone who's set up this room by themselves knows that it's better with a lot of hands, right? And so it is. The surrender of our individual, I'm going to get it done, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to ask for help. We need to surrender that. Because together we can do so much more than we can do on our own. Jesus knew that. And that's why he calls folks who will be good at living in community. And so the third part, or the third place of surrender, happens after this amazing catch of fish. I don't know why I turned the page, I'm not looking. After the amazing catch of fish, they bring it back to shore, and Peter, Simon Peter, is like, Lord. Notice now it's not master anymore. It's Lord. Lord, go away from me. I am a sinful man. Lots of times we don't feel adequate to the task, right? We feel embarrassed by our shortcomings. We feel like we've not measured up in so many ways. How could I do anything good? And this is not just in kind of the life of faith. This is also lots of times in our faith. Any parent feel inadequate ever raising the kids? Oh, wait. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's only until you talk to somebody else and they say, I'm just fumbling along too, that you say, I'm not alone. But in raising children in our professional setting, going for that promotion or going for that new job, do I really have what it takes to make it? I've made this mistake or made that mistake. How many times are we limited by our limited assessment of ourselves, right? This goes for the life of faith as well as any other area of life. And Peter's showing that here. Just go away from me. Go away from me. I'm a sinful person. We need to surrender the limitations that we have. Knowing that, we're called to something great. We are following in the footsteps of greatness. Notice, and this is our challenge, notice that after Peter says, Lord, go away from me, I'm a sinful man. What's Jesus' response? I'm going to make you catch people. He doesn't necessarily disagree with Peter that he's a sinful. He didn't say, oh, no, you're not a sinful man. But he doesn't say, oh, you're not good enough to follow either. And nor does Jesus say that for any of us. Jesus knows full well, God knows full well what our limitations are. And is committed to filling us with God's Spirit and sending us forward in power. Look at what Peter's able to accomplish in his life and ministry. A leader among the disciples. Never stops making dumb mistakes, by the way. Leader of the disciples. The foundation of the first century church. Someone that we recognize by first name all these many generations later. And so, surrender. We can get a lot further by getting ourselves out of the way. And during the Lenten season is a perfect time to surrender. God's got it all in hand. Jesus knows what he's doing. It doesn't have to be our way. We don't have to do it on our own. And we can do it even with the limitations that we have. And when we do, whole new opportunities open up. Opportunities for us to grow and to heal and to become stronger. But even more so, opportunities for the world to see the coming kingdom of God. Let's pray. God, we are thankful this day that you have called us to follow. To follow Jesus, to surrender ourselves, and to claim something greater. To be something more than we are today. We trust you. And as we step forward in faith this Lenten season, work in us, work in this community of faith that is St. Andrew, and grow us up into the likeness of Jesus. We pray in Jesus' awesome name. Amen. Amen. As we continue to worship this morning, we'll have now an opportunity to offer our tithes and offerings.